Welcome, everybody, to I'll Hang Up and Listen, brought to you by Fatty Beer Company, Western New York's premier market and tap room. Over 300 beers to choose from at all 6 Western New York locations. Make sure if you're going to make it a fatty beer, or make sure if you get a beer, make sure you make it a fatty beer. Tongue-tied. And Buffalo Logo Apparel, all of your apparel needs, whether it's your shirts, your hats, your hoodies, a lot of great Bills gear. Make sure you go check them out at Buffalo Logo Co. on Instagram and Twitter. buffalogo.com. You can find Fatty Beer and all their locations at Fatty Beer on Instagram and Twitter, fattybeer.com. I am Duane from Two Goalies, One Mic. Here, Sabres embarrassed once again. 4-1, second loss in a row with Terry in the building on this road trip. What else is there to say? You'd think that, kind of hope that Terry's there because he's taking notice, or he's taking more notice, or I honestly don't generally really know what he's doing there. Personally, you would like to think that he is paying attention, and he's, with Kevin sitting there right next to him, you like to think that maybe he's starting to feel the hot seat a little bit. I don't know. I mean, it's wishful thinking if anyone thinks that Kevin Adams is going to get fired here near the end of the season. He survived a 13-game losing streak. He survived the trade deadline. I think he's your GM next year. But interesting enough to see Terry Pegula on a road trip for the second game in a row, sitting in a suite with Kevin Adams. And if anyone saw, we didn't do that last I'll Hang Up and Listen because it was a later game. But if everyone saw that picture floating around Twitter, Terry and Kevin were sitting in a suite, but they were like 10 seats apart. They couldn't see more further apart. Like two people didn't want to be sitting next to each other. And then, of course, there was Matt Ellis because he belongs in the same suite as the owner, right? Just kind of goes to show you the relationship between Kevin Adams and Matt Ellis. And even though he was essentially demoted off the bench to the eye in the sky, he's still sitting in a suite with his best friend, Kevin. So I don't know. From Real Deal Prime here, this draft pick is going to be amazing. Yeah, we'll see. The article of The Athletic must have struck a nerve. I don't think it's a coincidence. I don't think that it's a coincidence that article comes out and all of a sudden Terry Pegula comes out of hiding and visually to all of us is at games. So from our boy Mauricio, horrible puck manager, offensive zone, third line, invisible. Krebs and Benson lacked depth scoring all season long. We need 2 new top 6 players with Norris. We lack talent. Krebs can't play make in the zone. Listen, it's, it sucks not having Norris and the new guy. You already knew about the injury history. We're not really too sure. Not too sure if it's a shoulder. I don't know if they've really clarified what the issue is with him. But definitely not a good look. The guy you just required already missing, what is his 3rd game in a row now? Not a good look for Kevin Adams. And if you're Terry Pegula sitting in that suite, you got to be thinking, we traded Cousin, who for the most part is performing pretty well in Ottawa. The guy that we got back in return has missed already like 3 or 4 games. So not a good look at all for Kevin Adams in that respect. You hope that this isn't the shoulder with him and it's something different. We'll see. But again, 15 games left, 15 or 14, and it couldn't come to an end sooner. I think I speak for a lot of Sabres. I know I speak for myself, man. I'm just ready for the season to be over and already be looking at draft guides. And it sucks, but 14 years in a row, no playoffs. I imagine we'll be mathematically eliminated here within the next week or two. You have to think. I'm not sure when the earliest that is possible to happen, but we'll see. More from Mauricio. Nepotism, Ellis, Adams, Appert, Wilford, good old boys. I hope they clean house. Lindy is going to be here next year no matter what. This isn't on him for the most part. I'm sure there are things you can fault him for sure this year, but this is the team he inherited. They're not going to fire a guy as loved as Lindy Ruff after one season. They're going to give him at least, till next year to get this ship right. And, we'll see what comes from it. But unfortunately, hopefully, fortunately, they clean house with that entire staff and let him bring on his own staff the way it should have been from day one. Power play is still atrocious. PK is dog shit. 5-on-5 has been dog shit. As good as they've been at 5-on-5, they were absolutely horrible today. Again, they started off fine in that first period. I thought they were missing a lot of nets, doing their best Alexei Zhitnik impersonations. And then a complete collapse in the second period. They were chasing so much, especially, when pinned down in their own end. There was no structure to their 5-on-5 defense. They were just chasing the entire time. Matt Boldy had his way with them today. You look at that one goal, I would say is the Marco Rossi goal, or no, Zuccarello goal. I think Zuccarello goal. Like, Boldy just entered the zone, made his way through 3 different Buffalo Sabres, and then was able to get that puck over to Zuccarello. I believe it was Zuccarello for the goal. And it's just like, that's one of their top players, man. There needs more emphasis on stepping up on him, not just giving him the zone the way they did, just playing very passive, very, very passive. I wonder if Quinn is hurt or if Lindy just has had enough of him. I mean, it could be both. I mean, I'd imagine he's a healthy scratch. That's from what I heard. And now Lindy's just like Quinn was out because he missed the morning. And so, there was a lot of stuff today about, and I tweeted it out too about the Marco Rossi, passing up on Rossi, because we value Jack Quinn. I was very pro Marco Rossi that draft. We needed a center very badly. We lacked a lot of center depth. And Jack Quinn, who played for the 67s along with Marco Rossi, while he was a phenomenal goal scorer in the OHL, there was zero denying that Marco Rossi was the best center in the draft. Obviously, it's not his fault. He nearly died, I believe, from COVID. To start his career, and then once he got back on the ice and he was able to develop his game a little bit, he's turned into a really, really, really good player for the Minnesota Wild, a good two-way player, and a guy who's, I think he's on pace for over 60 points to end the year. That's a player the Buffalo Sabres could really use, instead of Jack Quinn, who, apparently at this point is only useful in a shootout because he just very invisible when he does play. You don't notice him ever. I don't know. I know the injuries have had to have played into it, but I'm right. If they waived him tomorrow, I'd be completely fine with it. I'm over watching that guy contribute absolutely nothing to this team. If he needs to be shut down, sent on some rehab assignment to Rochester, I don't know what you need to do. He wouldn't pass through waivers. Somebody would take a waiver on him, and they're not going to, he would not make it through waivers. You would lose him for nothing, essentially. But it'd be nice for him to just go to Rochester. It really, really, really would. Sucks, but that's the position they put themselves in. I know the only way he gets to Rochester is on a rehab assignment, unfortunately. They won't clean house. Kevin Adams is a poop boy. Again, I know you're probably going to start next season with Kevin Adams as your general manager, but again, that picture, and I forget who it was, but they posted that picture of Kevin Adams, Ellis, and Pagula in the suite together, how far away they all were from each other. And then they put a video, and it was from a few years back, of Terry in a suite with Brandon Bean, and just them just so close, and the excitement. So, I know how can you be excited in the suite when you're just doing nothing but losing? But it's just night and day different. It's almost staggering how different it is between the Bills and the Sabres. And I've been saying this for a long time. The Buffalo Sabres under Terry Pagula, since he bought the Bills, we've been the red-headed stepchild in the back seat of the car in the middle of the winter with the windows down. That's the way things have been since he bought the Bills. The Sabres have become a secondary priority, if that. I think the Bandits might have to be more of a priority at this point. I don't know. It's staggering, the difference. The excitement and the prioritization and just the focus from one team to the other. And I get the semantics of it. Yeah, one team makes you a ton of money and they're good. And they've won 5 straight division titles and they're Super Bowl contenders. Their team is going to miss the playoffs for the 14th year in a row in a league where more than half the teams make it every single year. You can accidentally make the playoffs in the NHL as an average to mediocre team. If anything, this could have been that year for the Buffalo Sabres. This should have been that year because the East has been awful. But, another season lost. And you troll accounts out there who love to point out the positive, look at the year Tage is having, look at the year Darlene is having, look at Zach Benson's defensive analytics. Okay, well, you just wasted another year of all that. Another year of that great talent. Another entry-level year of Zach Benson wasted on a season that went nowhere. A season where you took steps back. You absolutely took steps back. You somehow found a way you're going to find a way to score less points in the standings this year than last when the narrative coming to the season was being harder to play against, guys that want to be here, everything Kevin Adams said. And it's, you want to say it's mind-blowing, but it's also not surprising. I just don't know. I genuinely don't know. Again, I don't know. So that being said, I don't really have a lot for you today. It's a 2:00 game on a Saturday. I'm just over it. Absolutely over it. And anybody who sits there and tries to defend this mediocrity, whether you're defending the owner, you're defending the GM, I'm sorry, you're not a real fan. You're not a real fan. You're just not. You'll never convince me that you're a real fan if you're okay with the way things are. You're just not a real fan. You'll not convince me that you're a real fan. If you aren't angry, and if you aren't complaining, and if you aren't livid with the direction of this franchise and the way things are, to me, you're just not a real fan. You're a casual fan who will be there when the team is good. And here's the thing: I don't blame guys for wanting to leave when the team is like this. I really don't blame you. But if you come at people like me with trying to, look at the bright side, and they're defend ownership for the ineptitude for 14 years now, hired and fired 4 GMs, I don't know how many head coaches. It's a joke. It's an absolute joke. I know. How can anybody put up with 14 years of mediocrity? Yes, this crap has to end on. It does. It does. Terry is involved with the Sabres and not the Bills. They told him stay out of it. He's got to get the person in there to run hockey operations. Yeah, listen, we had that. We had Jean-Luc Grandpierre on for episode 183, and he said those things. That how much, how well of a ship that Columbus has been run. And you mentioned how much it would mean to the Sabres to have somebody. And again, I'm going to speak on Terry Pegula as a human being, not as a Sabres owner, as a Bills owner, as a human being. As a father, you have a daughter who is, I don't follow tennis, but a star, who travels the world. You're trying to focus on that as a father, and then as a husband, a wife who's sick. She's sick. How can you focus on 2 major sports franchises with all that going on in your life? So wouldn't it make sense to have somebody in that position to help handle those things? Would it not make sense? If you're looking at this from a human perspective, how can you possibly have your focus on everything that you're responsible for when you have all of that going on in your life as a father and a husband? You just can't. There's nobody in the world that could. I truly don't believe it. So wouldn't it make sense to have somebody that would be able to take that burden off your shoulders and just, be that focus for you? Have the guy that you trust that make those decisions. Just because for you, at least, it didn't work with Pat LaFontaine doesn't mean it won't work for, the next guy that you try. Go through the proper channels, hire somebody that's going to make those difficult decisions. Like Don Waddell, in Columbus, like I said, Jean-Luc Grandpierre said, Don Waddell, he's a GM, and I believe he runs the, I know that John Davidson's involved too. But the owner is essentially there just to write the checks. He's there to write the checks. And that's how it should be. You should be there to write the checks and let those people that you hire to make those decisions make those decisions. Because I don't think anybody is buying anymore that Kevin Adams is, the one making the end-all be-all decisions. No way. No shot. Nobody believes that anymore. He can say it as much as he wants. He can get frustrated when having to answer that question like we've seen in the past. But nobody believes that Kevin Adams has the final say in all the decisions made on this team. There's no doubt about it that there is an internal salary cap. And again, there's no doubt in anyone's mind that when it comes to major decisions like the Dylan Cousins trade, that isn't getting okayed by Terry Pegula, which I can see them having to run something like that by an owner for any team for a trade like that. But when it's decisions like that, but every other major or minor decision that you have to run by your owner time and time again, it's just not how you run a sports team. It's just not. It's one thing if Terry was, I don't know, maybe he thinks of himself as a great hockey mind, but it's clear that you're not, dude. It's 14 years in a row. 14 years in a row. I don't know. I really just don't know anymore. Here from Chris Durr. Terry doesn't care about any of this. Terry doesn't care about any of this to him. It's just more business and more money and tax write-offs. As long as he is making money, none of this matters to him. I mean, he's not making money with the Sabres, though. He's not. I never thought about that. It must be a money thing. So for whatever reason, as loaded as he is, it's definitely, this team doesn't make him money. It doesn't. One of the things that purchased the most is I want to love this team and cheer for them, but it just seems that I care more than the ownership does. It sometimes does seem like that. I can't speak for Terry Pegula, but why at this point in the season are we finally seeing you consistently for 2 games? You know what I mean? People like to say that he's at every game. I find that hard to believe. Because why is it a big deal right now, visually, at least from a fan perspective, is being talked about this much on games, whatever it is, 69, 8, 9, or 70. Now it's a big deal that people are seeing Terry Pegula again. It's probably because he hasn't been there for most of the season. I don't know. Anyways, guys, I'm just going to keep this one short today. Sabres lose 4-1, lose second in a row. Terry Pegula in the house. I don't know. I genuinely think that it has to do, of course, with that. Definitely has to do, in my opinion, with that the article that came out from The Athletic. So, anyways, guys, I'll hang up and listen. Remember, this is brought to you by Fatty Beer Company, Western York's premier market and tap room with over 300 beers to choose from. If you're going to get a beer, make sure you make it a Fatty beer. And as always, go Sabres.